Hello, welcome to my channel. Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today is Monday, May 6th. It is the start of my official Horror Mayhem Readathon, where I'm beginning week 1. Week 1 for Horror Mayhem is local horror. And local horror is to read stories set in your local area or by authors from your local area. And it's really up to each individual person to decide what they want to consider their own local area. I am just considering the state of Virginia, my local area for this readathon. And I'm very lucky to have an anthology of short stories set in Virginia. I have also started a book. It's called Clowns versus Spiders by Jeff Strand. And it, surprisingly, is set in Virginia. Although it's not really set in Virginia. I think Jeff Strand just picked a state off the map and said, I'll set this story in Virginia. I have discovered no local flavor in that book. While the short stories set in Virginia have a whole lot of local flavor, I'm recognizing a lot of the names and locations in those stories. But that will be for a later review. And I hopefully get some other books done. This week will mostly be Horror Mayhem, but I should probably try to dip into something else just to keep the variety going. Spiders versus Clowns, originally published in 2019 by Jeff Strand. This book starts off with a young clown named Jaunty. He is injured in a rodeo as a rodeo clown and gets hired on with a circus troupe of 4 other clowns. And then they spend 18 years forming a close working relationship and friendship until the owner of the circus decides that he just doesn't want clowns anymore and fires them all. They've been working together, as I said, for 18 years and want to continue working together. The job opportunities for clowns is not so great. They want to be joyful, happy clowns, but clowns have become scary things, and they don't really want to be scary clowns. That is until a haunted house is set up. This is a tourist trap haunted house around Halloween, and they want to have a scary clown room. And of course, they need the money, so they all decide to become scary clowns, even though it's against their clowning philosophy. However, on opening night, it appears that earlier during the day, a land developer thought there'd be a good opportunity to open a caving amusement park. So he blows a hole in an ancient cave just to see if it's possible. And large spiders start emerging out of that cave. They're, about the size of your hand or maybe your head. Big-ass spiders. And of course, these spiders invade the haunted house. And then it's up to the clowns to escape this haunted house alive, because these spiders can kill you. And then it's up to the spiders. It's up to the clowns to destroy the spiders. Hence the title, Clowns versus Spiders. And now, one of the benefits of reading this is that it's actually set in Virginia. And being local horror week, this book fits very nicely. I had not intended to read it as part of my local horror book. I am reading a book of short stories for that. But it was a bonus, except that I don't think Jeff Strand put a whole lot of effort into his background. It's just like he picked out a state from an atlas and said, I'll set this story in Virginia. Well, anyway, it's a fun story. And Jeff Strand, he writes his books, and I'm having to think, what type of hallucinogenics has Jeff Strand been smoking or snorting or whatever to get this story down? Because it's absolutely ludicrous. No plausibility whatsoever. It is absolutely hilarious, and I really loved it. You can't take this horror seriously, but it's fun. because they're clowns. They're dressed up as scary clowns, and they're fighting giant spiders. Really amusing. Whisper Down the Lane by McLeod Chapman, a novel originally published in 2021. This is a book that is told in two storylines. The storylines are going to converge at one point, of course, because that's the way it always works in these novels. It opens in 2013. There is an elementary school teacher named Richard. He is teaching at a rather posh elementary school in Exurbia, the exurbs of Virginia. It is a small town, Virginia, but all the rich people have been moving there from Washington, D.C., so they can have some nice place to raise their children. But one morning, the pet rabbit of one of the school teachers is discovered on the soccer field. It has been mutilated in a way that cannot be attributed to an accident. It has hints of satanic worship. Now, Richard is recently married. He has married another school teacher who has a young son who is enrolled in the school. He is about 5 years old. The second storyline is concerning Sean and his mother. His mother is recently divorced from her husband and is fleeing, and she goes to a different small town in Virginia where the boy Sean gets enrolled as a charity case in an exclusive elementary school. And there is a special elementary school teacher in that school that all the children love. And he is apparently a very kind, considerate, and caring teacher. Except that one day the mother asks him questions of the boy Sean about how he got some bruises. And it comes out that the boy starts telling a tale of what happens in this school teacher's classroom. He is part of a cult of Satanists, and he is involving other school children and other teachers in this Satanist cult. Now, in 1982, around that time, there was a real case that this story was based on the Satanic Panic, that everyone got all in a hue and cry about teachers bringing in children into Satanism. So it does count as loosely based on a true story. It's obviously not a true story in this novel. But the Satanic Panic was a real thing back in the 80s. I was a teenager at the time. I don't really remember it, but I was not much of a news junkie. So it could have happened and it just totally passed me by. So now you have these two stories. And of course, as I said, they do converge. The convergence point is a little obvious to my point of view, especially once you get, a little more of the way a third in the book, maybe a little bit sooner. He said, I wonder if that's where they're going to converge. And it did happen that way. That's not necessarily saying anything bad against the convergence point, that it's a little bit obvious. Sometimes it needs to be a little obvious so the reader is engaged and sees all the pieces falling together. There is one piece, however, that is not completely obvious, but should be completely obvious to the astute reader. It did pass me by and caught me a little bit of a surprise at the very end of the book. Now, there is an epilogue to this book where there is another little surprise that comes out that I did see coming after the main reveal of the incidents are coming together. I said, oh, I bet this is going to happen too. And it did. It was okay. I kind of liked that little ending because it brought all the characters to get together sort of in a full circle. In any case, I can really recommend Whisper Down the Lane. I truly enjoyed it. It was an audiobook. This is the second book by this author that I have listened to. The other one is, I believe, The Remaking, a story of remaking a cult horror film over again also located in Virginia. So I get all this local horror in my for my prompts this week, and I did like it a lot. Dark Corners of the Old Dominion, a Virginia horror anthology, edited by Joseph Maddrey and Michael Rook. This is a collection of short stories written by authors who live in Virginia or lived here before and generally set their short stories in Virginia. Since I am currently living in Virginia, this counts as my local horror group. There are a lot of short stories in here, spread out over a large part of the Virginia. Virginia is a rather diverse state. We have mountains, we have lakes, we have rivers, and we sort of have cities. We're right next door to Washington, D.C. So you get all that in this anthology. Now, my issue is when reading anthologies, you're always going to have some highs and some lows. That's pretty much standard for every anthology across all genres everywhere. And it's certainly true for this one. There are no knock it out of the park short stories in this anthology. And there's only one that I was really not too pleased with. I didn't write down that in my notes. It's just, I thought it was just a little weak. Now, there are two stories I thought were particularly strong. Room 1968 by Nicole Wilson. This is set in the Crystal City Underground, where a man is supposed to go to a business meeting in this obscure location in this underground. He can't find it, and he's told by no uncertain means that he cannot be late. And I don't think it really is that great of a story, but it tickled me. It suited the purpose when I read it on like Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning or whenever I read that. The other one that I read was Auditorium by Sydney Williams. This is a group of two youngish people who are a little bit on the outskirts of a normal society. One of them admits that he's always going to be there. And his girlfriend, it's sort of hard to describe if she's a girlfriend or just a friend who's a girl. He says, you are going to go normal one of these days. But they're in the backwoods of Virginia, and they hear this story of a train wreck that happened decades ago, where it was a circus train wreck. And lowland gorillas escaped. And these gorillas have supposedly taken up living in the woods of Virginia. And they said, wouldn't it be fun to seek out those gorillas? I'll leave it there. It was a fun story. And if you live in Virginia and you like horror stories, I can highly recommend this. Not only is this local authors with local settings, this is part of a scare care program where all the proceeds for this collection are going to help people in medical need who cannot afford it. And that's always a good thing. I have been reading a lot of short stories for this first week. My plan was to read a short story every morning that was not part of my Dark Corners collection. And I read a lot. And sometimes I read more than one. On 1 or 2 days, I kind of skipped. Now, I'm not going to tell you about every short story that I read because that's just way too long. I will give you the highlights. In the description of this video, I will list every short story that I did read, however. The first ones come from a collection called The Mammoth Book of Zombies, edited by Stephen Jones, originally published in 1983. And there is a really fun short story, On the Far Side of the Cadillac Desert with Dead Folk by Joe R. Dinsdale. This came highly recommended from Cliff at Cliff Dark's Gems. It is sort of a post-apocalyptic story of a bounty hunter going after a criminal. But in this future, there are zombies. And he just happens to pick up this criminal in a zombie dance bar where men get paid, or they pay, to dance with zombie women. Now, the women have to have their teeth removed, or the zombies, because, they're zombies and they'll still bite you. And then after that, it gets even stranger as the bounty hunter and his prisoner get kidnapped by the man who created the zombie plague. And there is a sexy nun, and zombies, and necrophilia. The other story that I read was The Taking of Mr. Bill by Graham Masterton. And Graham Masterton is one of the staples of horror writing. He's a good author, and this story did not disappoint. All I will tell you about this story is it's a really twisted view on Peter Pan with zombies. The next collection I read out of was Splatterpunk'S Basement, edited by Jack Bantry, published in 2023. I read a bunch of short stories. I read 7 short stories out of this collection. Not all of them are worth mentioning. The only one I will talk about just a little is the last in this collection, which is A Friday Night in Damascus by Brian Keene. Brian Keene is probably most famously known for his first novel, The Rising, which was a zombie novel. And the thing about this short story is it's almost nonfiction, because it talks about real world horrors that maybe you don't want to know about. I read a short story from this collection, Pleasant Dreams by Robert Bloch. Robert Bloch is, of course, most famously known for his novel Psycho. This collection was originally published in 1960, and the short story that I read, Sweets to the Sweet, was published in 1947. It is really rather a quaint story that involves witches and evil children. I wouldn't say it's a great short story, but it was fun enough. I also read a short story from Lurking in the Dark, a HORRORTUBE anthology, edited by Claire R. Saint. All the authors in this anthology had at one time BookTube channels. So you are supporting your fellow booktubers when you buy this book. I have read previous stories in this collection, and it just so happens when you're reading short story collections, you just put it down. So I picked it up again, and the story I read was Werewolf of Distinction by Austin Smith. It is a rather unique take on werewolves. Okay, that is a wrap. That is what I read for Horror Mayhem 2024, Week 1, Local Horror. It's now on to Movie Horror, where I have to find books that were made into a movie, or novelizations, or just horror stories about the movie industry. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.